Samuel P. Fuller, age 24. Linda Mae Jenkins, age 19. Brutally attacked March 3rd, 1946. Howard W. Turner, 29. Emma Lou Cook, 17. Bodies discovered in a wooded area on March 24th. Roy Allen, 17. Peggy Loomis, 15. Both found dead April 14th in Spring Lake Park. Floyd Reed, age 34. Murdered in his home on May 3rd. Mrs. Reed shot twice, but survived. This man's identity is unknown. He was believed to be between 30 and 40 years old. He wore a white hood and was known only as the Phantom Killer. World War II had just ended. In Texarkana, Arkansas, boys had come home to their families. Husbands reunited with their wives. It was a happy, peaceful time. Until the Phantom Killer struck. For 4 months, he held an entire city in the icy grip of terror. Now, Charles B. Pierce brings this incredible, shocking, and true story to the screen in The Town That Dreaded Sundown, starring Academy Award winner Ben Johnson as Captain J.D. Morales of the Texas Rangers.
We got a cold-blooded killer here. A man who nobody sees. A phantom who, so far, hasn't made any mistakes.
Andrew Prine as Deputy Norman Ramsey of the Texarkana Sheriff's Department.
The only thing we really do know is that we've got a very strange person on our hands.
The Town That Dreaded Sundown, a true story.
Hello, welcome to Movie Uppers. My name is Bob Sham.
My name is Angela.
The sounds here may be dogs and the spooky ooky sounds of spooky ooky season. It is Halloween Hump Fest, our second annual. We are talking a horror drop 5 days a week, every weekday, and each day has its own special theme. And on Thursdays, we're calling it True Threat Thursdays. Horror movies that are based upon scary things that allegedly actually happen. Some more alleged than others, but all based upon something true. And we got a couple of serial killer ones. And this one is like the proto version of what we're going to talk about for True Threat Thursday next week. But this one is a movie about a mass serial killer that terrorized Texarkana in 1946, which is something that actually happened. The movie is called The Town That Dreaded Sundown from 1976, directed by Charles B. Pierce, written by Earl E. Smith, and starring Ben Johnson, Andrew Prine, Charles B. Pierce, Don Wells. Bud Davis plays the Phantom Killer. He would become a stunt coordinator in later movies. And it is narrated by Vern Stearman. And the thing that popped Charles B. Pierce off is when he directed the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, which was about a cryptid, a folklore character, which was kind of a mockumentary about this thing that people claim they saw in this part of Arkansas. And that also is where we first heard Vern Stearman narrate. When I was listening to the narration structure that occurs in this movie, it reminded me of The Legend of Boggy Creek. It became obvious that the people involved, it's the same people involved. The Legend of Boggy Creek kind of became a runaway hit, like a sleeper kind of hit that people really latched onto. And it was a movie I watched as a kid a lot.
I have heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. But if it was around when we were kids, which was very difficult to see a lot of stuff when we were kids, you know, you couldn't like replay.
Yeah, everything is a
You weren't
vague
watching things
memory.
on cable.
You probably
So
saw it.
it might be familiar. I'm interested. I like this guy's voice.
It was Sunday, March 3rd, 1946. The beginning of a reign of terror for the people of Texarkana and surrounding areas of Arkansas and Texas. A terror so indelibly imprinted that today, 30 years later, people still speak of it fearfully.
Made a sequel to it that is completely panned. It was more of a dramatic. It wasn't like a mockumentary. The sequel actually appeared on a Mystery Science Theater 3000
nice.
episode.
That's cool.
But I do remember the sequel as well. It would be played on cable when we were kids quite a bit. But The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Now, the poster for this movie, when it came out, it had this claim in the tag poster that said, "Today he still lurks the streets of Texarkana." So this movie pops up 30 years after the point of the murders.
Which is possible. Depending on how old
people
the
got
serial
upset.
killer was at the time.
The people of Texarkana got upset
Of
at that.
course they did.
Well, they were claiming, like the sheriffs at that point were like, no, this isn't true. You don't actually know that.
They have no idea.
They don't know one way or the other.
No.
You know. But it's a great tagline. And I think they attempted some legal action or some pressure on the marketing campaign, but it didn't make any difference.
Because it could be possible. They never caught this guy. They don't know where he is. He could be in that town.
The framing of this film is a little confused. Like, we have it's set up with the narrations like it's going to be a mock documentary style with the Vern Stearman narrations.
It feels like an episode of The Dukes of Hazzard.
Well, that's the other part of it, is when we focus on these cops. And, you know, we have a pretty passive interest in true crime, so we are a little bit aware of this story, but we also knew when we were first talking to all these cops, they're not going to find this guy. There's a thing at the end that makes it seem like they almost got him and he just barely ran away. But no, in the cops in this movie, it's like it's played up, like you said, the Dukes of Hazzard cops, but they're supposed to be heroes. They're supposed to be the protagonists, but it's also played up for comedy effect.
Spark plug. Yes. You know the man in the white suit? That's Captain Morales. You'll be his driver. Try not to wreck him.
No, sir.
There is a character who is 100% there for comedy effect. They do weird things like make the murders way more bizarre than they actually were. At one point, he tapes a knife to the end of a girl's trombone and stabs her in the back with it. That didn't happen.
That scene was particularly annoying to me because at first he picks up the trombone and he makes a little sound with it.
What are you doing?
And then he starts to rig up the knife to the trombone. And when he's playing the trombone, he can't get air through it. And it was so aggravating to me that
there was no reason
that he couldn't get air through it. Like, why don't you put in a little Foley where it has the sound? You can't Foley a little trumpet sound in the edit room? There was something about that was, like, they went so goofy, but they didn't execute. This is like a kill that Freddy Krueger would do, but if Freddy Krueger did it, he'd play like a whole Scott Joplin song and just like be stabbing with the trombone. But it was just the concept of it was just so bizarre, just more funny than it was scary. And then they didn't even make him like play it. Like, if you're going to go the whole mile, the killer in this movie, as they call the Phantom Killer, he really was a guy who was witnessed running away from a crime scene in a mask, kind of similar to how they had the cop here. Oh, the dumb cop is
Sparkplug
is played by Charles B. Pierce. That's him. He cast himself as the biggest idiot on the police force. But they're all kind of fucking dumb. At one point, I thought they're probably going to do the Bugs Bunny thing where they're going to dress up like women and attempt to, and sure enough, 2 scenes after I thought that, it was a comedy played for laughs bit of all these men dressed exactly the same. No differentiation here.
They all looked like old ladies also. This guy was killing young people out parking. Not that it really matters because they just wanted to look like a couple, like a man and a woman. But when they're in the car together, Yeah, there's a lot of physical comedy where the cop who is the guy in the relationship is putting his arm around and like feeling up the boobs, and it's just ridiculous. There's also a car chase at one point where the car leaves the ground and lands in a mud puddle, and that was the most Dukes of Hazzard part of the whole movie. I thought it was going to be like it was ridiculous.
It was contrast of that, because the narrative structure of it, the narration structure, sets it up real nice.
Yes.
And if it played more into that mock documentary style, I think I would like the movie a lot better, because that framing is actually quite good, and the voice of Vern Stearman is nice to listen to, and it sounds very serious. And then you get the Keystone Cops goof around shit, and it's just dumb. Like you're wanting you're wanting these cops to die, essentially.
They also try to insinuate that all these cops are really good guys. And there's a discussion in the car where the local cop says to the one they brought in from Texas, "Do you think we'll catch him?" And he says, "It would be a miracle." And it's like they're putting this weight on it to where this was an impossible task from the beginning. There's no way they could have caught him.
It doesn't seem like the cops here are bad people, but they seem incompetent. Mm-hmm. That you really can't take any of them seriously at all. And this movie seems to posit to me that this guy managed to get away with it due to the ineptitude of the Texarkana police.
Yes.
That's what this movie, I believe, is telling me.
That's probably why they were also mad about it locally.
I don't know about that. I think maybe they just didn't think about it like that. You know,
yeah.
I think now the current climate of cop representation in movies would be a lot more wound up tight by the way the police want to be represented in this movie.
Well, there's that, but also this is a movie about murder. There are people
like murders that happen.
Murdered. This is based on truth.
A lot of the murders, the details are different. In the movie, it posits that the killer was biting people and tying them to a tree. The trombone thing was not a thing that actually happened, which just makes it so bizarre that that probably one of the strangest slasher kills you'll ever see in a movie. And the initial couple in the beginning they did survive. I think there was 5 victims total, but the things that happened the most was just people would just get shot in their car while they were making out in their car. And they had the woman who tried to escape but survived. They had said in the movie that she wasn't sexually assaulted. In real life, she was actually sexually assaulted by a gun when the actual killer chased her down. And the trombone thing, it plays like they were in a band playing at the prom, but the actual victim was playing the saxophone in a band that was playing at a VFW hall. And there was like an instrument. We don't know if the instrument was directly involved in the killing, but she was a saxophone player and the instrument was found later.
Just imagine if that was your sister and you're watching this movie and yeah, okay, they changed her name, but you know this is about your sister. And they changed it to a fucking ridiculous, comical murder.
Well, nowadays, and I think it started happening in the early 2000s, they actually play this movie in Texarkana to the public like around Halloween season. So it's become a tradition to play this movie. There's something weirdly ahead of its time where we're in a era now where there's a bunch of true crime podcasts and a lot of them are trying to be funny. And I think one of our early podcast concepts was a podcast like that.
I didn't even think about it like that.
But there is something a little weirdly ahead of its time here. But it's representing something that is just beat to death nowadays. The idea of actual murder with a humorous spin. That's nothing unusual now for podcast listeners, right? What? Last Podcasts on the Left, My Favorite Murder, shit like that. Things that want to be like comedic and quirky while talking about people dying horrifying deaths. by actual murderers.
They posit, like on the poster, that he could still be around. It's interesting to think about the fact that they show it in the theater every year, because the image they give us...
I don't know if it's in a theater. It could be like...
Okay, well, it's interesting that they show it to the public every year, because the image they give us to think he might still be around is a man's feet lining up to go to a movie.
Ben Johnson and Andrew Prine are the more seasoned actors here. Ben Johnson plays the Texas Ranger, Prine, the deputy who is by his side, who does see the killer running away and getting into a car. But it's also the biggest actor probably at this point was Dawn Wells, who was playing Helen Reed, who is based on the victim of Katie Starks. And Dawn Wells played Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. So she was kind of the big get for this movie, right? The scene that they show with her husband and her being killed and how that plays out is probably one of the better scenes in the whole movie and among the best shot.
It really is. I thought that while it was happening.
The killer, the Phantom Killer, you see him pop up behind her husband while he's sitting in an easy chair in the window, and he shoots him through the window. And he ends up chasing Dawn Wells' character through a cornfield, and you see it framed up with the moon in the sky. It actually looks really good.
There are a couple of really beautiful shots in this movie.
There are moments that do look really nice.
Yeah.
It shows that Charles B. Pierce had some chops, or at least the cinematography by Jim Roberson.
Yeah.
That there was something here, like what would become true slasher horror is developing throughout the 70s. You got movies like this, and then you got Black Christmas, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then by the time you hit Halloween in 78, then that's what everyone's just trying to emulate. Like it was just the most realized version of it at that point. So you do see, when you go back to slasher horror that's developing throughout the 70s, you do see these small strokes of genius, but it doesn't overwhelm the bizarre stupidity of the majority of the movie itself. But there is something foundational you can find here. And there is something that is actually decent to look at here. You just have to maybe get past half of the movie. It's really just the dumb goofball nature of the police and how they act that just makes it seem so... I would consider that a lot more disrespectful to the actual victims than any notion that he might still be out there. But we get near the end, and there is a chase scene where they catch the killer just pontificating on a cliffside. You'd think you might want to take your mask off, especially when you're not actively killing people, considering it's daylight. They're just following these leads. They've arrested some dudes. There's people who are maybe a little off in the head claiming that they're the killer, but they know that they're not. They seem to know enough when people are lying. But so they get some call to find some guy. I don't think nobody has died since the Dawn Wells character and her husband. Like they're the final victims. So when they're following this guy around, it's during the daylight, which he has never active in before. And this killer is just walking around the daylight wearing his mask. And when they see the killer in his mask, he's just standing on a cliff, just looking around.
I think he's kneeling down as though he's pondering life.
It's like the killer realized that, the killer didn't realize that in the daylight, your actual face, while not committing murders, is probably your better disguise. Instead of just walking around the woods in the daytime with your mask on when you're not even in the process of a kill.
Some of the better shots in this movie are when they are talking about him and they go down to the same pair of shoes that they follow throughout, and implying that he was eating dinner at the table next to the cops talking about him.
Yeah.
There's these little...
Those are nice little creepy moments.
Nice creepy moments, but that also tells us that when he's not murdering, he does go around with his real face out.
Yeah.
If that's the truth. So... Again, like you said, why would he be in the middle of the day with a mask on? Also, why is he still driving the same stolen car that he knows a cop saw him in after the first situation? Because that's one of the ways they know is they say, oh, this is the car I saw 2 months ago and it's stolen. Steal a different car.
Well, they seem to chase him down between some train tracks, and they make it seem like they managed to get some shots on. So they're trying to save the reputation of the police near the end of the movie here by making it look like they just barely missed him. But
they shot him in the leg, I think.
But this was not a scene that happened in real life at all. And there's one point where you see the train tracks, and you can see the cameraman that they've rigged onto the train.
It's such a quick moment that I did not believe what I saw because it looked like a naked man holding a camera. And when you rewound it, it was a shirtless man holding a camera.
Yeah, wearing in like jean shorts or some shit shooting.
They didn't even use a shot from the top of that
I don't
train.
even recall a shot
what
from
he
the
was
train.
Doing.
It probably just all looked like shit.
Yeah,
but they
shaky.
They did manage to get a shot of the cameraman on the train. That's good. This movie was successful. $400,000 budget, made around $4 million. So there was something here that helped Charles Pierce continue to make his movies. He was like a set designer leading up to this. He was also in marketing, and he borrowed money from trucking companies to fund his Boggy Creek movie, which led him to his success and being able to make more and more movies.
The poster and tagline for this movie, especially considering the time, thinking about something that is real and happened in a small town, it makes sense. It's very, very good marketing. It makes sense that he was a marketer.
Yeah.
Because he knew what to say to draw people in.
Well, he wasn't swayed by the angry town wanting him to not put that on the posters, but a lot of the posters were already like printed off. So, I mean, what could you do? But yeah, that's The Town That Dreaded Sundown from 1976, directed by Charles Pierce. There's not nothing here, but there is just some absurd shit that just seems completely. This movie is almost like wearing two different types of shoe, one on each foot.
Yeah,
that's what this movie feels like. And one shoe is like, hey, that's a nice shoe, but why is the other one a clown shoe? Like, you got one really nice, clean-looking sneaker, and then the other is like a bowling shoe or a clown shoe. That's what this movie is. So we're going to give this 1 through 5 each, combined for best out of 10. I'm going to give The Town That Dreaded Sundown a 2.75.
I'm going to give it a 2.25.
So that would be a 5 out of 10. Pretty much right down the middle for us. Take a look, folks. The Town That Dreaded Sundown is a 5. At the bottom of our 5s... I mean, it's all alphabetical order. It's between the Super Mario Brothers movie from 2023 last year and one under it from the 4.75s. It's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So The Town That Dreaded Sundown is pretty much ranking around your mid-tier deep franchise horror movies. Seems appropriate to me. Halloween Humpfest will roll on. We got more shit tomorrow. What am I calling Fridays? I forget. They're more monster slasher or like creature based. So yes, we'll be back tomorrow. So come on back for more Halloween Humpfest all month long. All right. So check the show notes, links, other places to find us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. They did remake this movie. Blumhouse did. I think the ratings are a little better on average than this one, but I did want to get to the OG adaptation of this true crime story. So I don't really know anything about the newer one. You can tell us how they compare in the comments if you've seen them both. But anyway.
Happy Halloween.